I discovered 3 terrifying true tales that will haunt your nightmares forever. I never should have opened that door. It all started on a regular Tuesday. I was cozy in my room, scrolling through old photos. The familiar blur of everyday life wrapped around me like a warm blanket. But something felt off, like a chill creeping in from the window. That's when I heard its sound of whispers, low and soft, but unmistakable. I froze. My heart raced. The shadows in the corners of my dimly lit room danced like restless spirits. A wave of cold washed over me, leaving a knot of dread in my stomach. I glanced at the door, the threshold to the unknown. My mind screamed at me to ignore it, to retreat into my safe cocoon. But curiosity lured me closer. I stepped into the darkness. The air grew thick, heavy with tension. Each creak of the floor sent shivers down my spine. I swear I felt eyes watching me. I could almost hear the wall pulsating, throbbing with secrets kept for too long. Then came the noiseless soft thud, a scraping sound. I twisted my body, scanning every inch of the room, expecting a silhouette to emerge from the gloom at any moment. The night deepened, and shadows stretched, transforming into grotesque shapes. My palms were clammy, my breath shallow. I could taste the fear in the air, metallic and sharp. And then it happened. A picture frame flew off the wall and shattered at my feet. I jumped back, heart pounding in my chest. What was happening? Was I losing my mind? I backed away slowly, my body tensing. That door, the one I had touched, suddenly slammed shut. The echo echoed around me, the finality of it sending my pulse into overdrive. I turned, ready to bolt, but it was too late. There, in the shadows, a figure shifted. Just as I was about to scream, everything went dark. Hey! Before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon, and while you're there, smash that like button. It really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. I awoke to a penetrating darkness, thick and suffocating, as if the very shadows had conspired to smother every ounce of light. My heart raced in the unsettling silence, a heavy weight clinging to my chest. It was impossible to tell how long I had lingered in that void of color, sound, or sensation. Yet I quickly realized I was not alone. A whisper curled around me like smoke, its chilling breath wrapping itself around my neck. I strained to listen, trying to decipher the fragmented words that clawed at my sanity. It was mocking and pleading all at once, laughter woven through a tapestry of sorrow. Help us! Panic detonated in my chest, propelling me to my feet. I groped blindly through the pitch blackness, hoping to find the comforting outline of the door. My fingers brushed against the cold wall, the canvas of this nightmare pulsing under my touch. For every step I took towards escape, another shadow danced closer, a flickering presence that seemed to take form just out of reach. Then came a terrible sound, a hollow rattle, like chains dragged across the floorboards, resonating in the silence. My breath hitched in my throat. I turned, instinctively backing away, my heart pounding in my ears like a drumbeat of dread. Those whispers grew louder, now accompanied by a cacophony of muted cries, all tangled in a chorus of otherworldly sorrow. I stumbled over something soft yet unyielding, crashing to the floor in a tangled heap. My pulse thudded violently as I scrambled back to my feet. I had felt a desperate hand grasping at my ankle, a cold caress of fingers that pulled me further into the dark. Fear ignited within, igniting a primal instinct to flee as I dashed toward where I presumed the door to be. The air thickened, coalescing into a tangible mist, swirling around me like the tendrils of a creeping fog. Desperation clawed at my throat. I was close. I could almost see the faint outline of the doorframe. Suddenly, the whispers shifted to an abrupt silence, leaving a suffocating void of anticipation. Then came the laughter, a cacophonous explosion that ricocheted off the walls of my mind, sharp as glass and vicious as a predator. Unable to resist the pull, I turned to find the source, eyes darting frantically through the writhing darkness. There it stood, the figure I had seen before, now closer, the features obscured yet teasingly familiar. It was a grotesque mockery of a human, its silhouette shifting as if fashioned from shadows and sorrow. "You should have never opened the door," it taunted, its voice slicing through the silence like a knife. "Now it's too late to escape." The floor trembled beneath me, and I turned to run, but the air thickened, wrapping around my legs like chains. I fought to break free, whispering prayers to the void. The walls constricted, bending inward as if the house itself had become sentient, eager to consume me whole. The laughter morphed into anguished screams, those entrapped souls reaching out toward me, their hands clawing mercilessly at the edges of the dark, and just as I felt the icy grip of despair close around my throat, the dormy only hope shuddered and cracked open with a deafening creak. Light poured into the room in treacherous streams, illuminating the monstrous form that gathered in the corners. With one desperate leap, I sprinted through the threshold, but a powerful force yanked me back at the last second. "Who will help you now?" It shrieked as darkness swallowed the light, plunging me into a chilling abyss where escape was an agonizing mockery. In that moment, I realized with horror that I hadn't escaped it. Ali had simply traversed deeper into the dark. The whispers returned, more feral than before, as my vision blurred and the figures around me surged forward, groping, hungry for a piece of my soul. As the screams faded into echoes of terror, I felt something wet and hot against my neck, a breath that wasn't mine. With a final futile scream, a shadow engulfed me, and I was plunged deeper into the darkness, a prisoner of fear, teetering on the edge of the unknown. And then there was that unmistakable sound, a child's laughter piercing through the cacophony, a haunting reminder that whatever awaited me in that abyss was even more twisted than I could have imagined. I glanced back, expecting to see nothing but dark, but to my horror, a figure shrouded in white filled the void, grinning wide as the darkness began to close in around me, and I braced myself for what came next. I found myself suspended in a menacing stillness, a perverse calm that saturated the air, thick with the promise of dread. The laughter lingered, twining itself around me, teasing and taunting as I breathed in the stench of decay and desperation that hung like a shroud. I turned, the figure in white drawing nearer, undulating beautifully yet sinisterly through the tendrils of shadow. It was a child no more than 8, with a porcelain face that shattered into cracks of darkness around the edges, the eyes deeper than the void itself. "Why did you leave us?" it whispered, voice sweet and saccharine, yet sharp as a shard of glass. A finger, delicate yet pointed and unnerving, beckoned me closer. I hesitated, my heart throbbing as the child's breath, a cocktail of sweetness and rot, coiled around my own throat. Behind me, the shadows writhed, whispering the torturous secrets of souls lost in agony. Each word a thorn, piercing deeper into my mind, unraveling my grip on reality. There was an insatiable hunger, an appetite for suffering, and I knew then that any movement away from this child would surely court the darkness lurking behind. "Come play with us?" it chirped, its grin stretching impossibly wide, revealing teeth that glistened unnaturally in the dark. Each glimmer seemed to mock my despair, illuminating ghostly phantoms that danced just beyond the reach of my sanity. I forced myself to speak, feeling my voice crack like a brittle twig. "What have you done? What have you taken?" The air shivered, and with it came an echoing cry of lost souls, muffled, obscured, yanking at the strings of my heart, urging me to flee. The child's laughter turned sinister, woven with the fabric of suffering. "We take what was promised. Your courage binds you to us now." A cold shiver ran down my spine, and a frantic glint of recognition dawned. This child, the desolation in its expression, echoed an unearthly disappointment deeper than the void. It was anguished by something unshared, something taken away. "Please, I don't want this," I demanded, desperation clawing at the words. But as I backed away, the air grew thick and suffocating. With a flick of its wrist, the child gestured toward the wall behind me, a shadowy outline morphing into figures I recognized, faces of those I once loved. Their expressions contorted in agony, mouths open in silent screams that extended into an infinite night. I stumbled as their eyes bore into me, imploring, pleading. "You left them behind." The child screeched now, the voice warping into something monstrous, flattening the naivety of innocence into razor-sharp malice. With each jesting breath, I felt vines of darkness reach for me, wrapping tightly around my ankles. The laughter grew into a frenzy, and the walls began to pulse, throbbing against my body like the very heartbeat of a malevolent beast. That I was suffocating beneath their weight, forced to confront the horrors of each anguished soul. Faces morphed into those of my childhood, a haunting montage of grief and betrayal. As I fought to breathe, the memories surged back, nausea mixing with fear. All those moments I had left behind, the love that had turned stale with distance, and the screams I had suppressed in my mind echoed back with clarion clarity. "There is no escape." The child sang sweetly, now beginning to dance, the shadows closing in, enveloping me like a suffocating blanket. I turned to break free, but the darkness swallowed me in stifling waves, tangling my thoughts as I clawed at the air, gasping. I could see the door behind Meth's threshold I had crossed moments ago now twisted and bent into a ghastly grin, each crack spelling doom. "You're one of us now," the child stated matter-of-factly, tilting its head as if trying to understand the implications of my despair. Just as I thought surrender was inevitable, a new presence shattered the suffocating calm. A long, low growl reverberated through the air, rising above the madness, primal and hungry. Those shadows recoiled with sparkled fear, parting reluctantly to reveal a monstrous figure cloaked in weaving darkness, bellowing like a tempest. My heart raced as it advanced, bristling with malice. In that moment, I caught a glimpse of something I couldn't fully comprehend, a leg twisting Jared with angles and claws, its eyes swirling flames of torment. The child glanced at it, and within its gaze, I saw not fear but recognition. Behind me, the wails of my loved ones crescendoed into a desperate chorus, a macabre symphony eager to drown me, and I realized in horror that an even greater abomination had come to collect. With a final roar, the monstrous figure lunged toward me, and I felt gravity shift. The shadows converged, no longer allies but eager to feast. I braced myself for impact, but then an unexpected sharpness pierced through the chaos, and an all-consuming darkness snuffed out my thoughts. Just before everything went black, I heard a whisper, distinct and cold. "You're not alone anymore." When consciousness returned, it was like surfacing from a deep, black ocean. My lungs burned, every inhale a jagged fragment of pain, tasting of copper and fear. I opened my eyes to a world blurred and malformed, as if reality itself had become liquid, unable to hold shape. The dull hum of something monstrous throbbed in the distance, its presence suffocating yet strangely soothing. I lay there, disoriented, wrapped in an unsettling silence that felt both comforting and violent in its stillness. As I blinked past the haze, I took in my surroundings. I was in a strange, dimly lit room that seemed to pulse in sync with the throbbing outside. The walls were adorned with peeling wallpaper, dark floral patterns twisting like serpents, and flecks of rust-stained blood marred the corners, painting a sanctum of horror. The air smelled of damp earth, mingling with a sugary, sickly scent that replayed the taste of decay on my tongue. I shuddered, trying to sit up, yet found my limbs heavy as if weighed down by unseen chains. A sense of dread coiled tighter around my heart with each labored breath, reminding me of the child's laughter and those soul-piercing eyes. Each beat of my heart resonated painfully in the stillness, and as I forced my body upright, I saw the faces of those I loved torn from memory, scattered like ashes in the wind around me. They were the same anguished visages I had glimpsed before, their forms bound in fleeting shadows, morphing between familiarity and a grotesque distortion. Where was I? Fingers trembling, I reached out toward the entangled specters, desperate to drown out their imploring eyes with clarity. "What do you want from me?" I rasped, my throat raw, the question echoing against the suffocating void. What answered was not a voice but a disembodied whisper drifting from the corners of the room, laden with despair. "You've awoken us." It cooed, and the words rippled through the air as if pulled by the unseen. The shadows began to shift, taking form a terrifying cacophony of grief wrapped in darkness, emerging like wisps of smoke twisted with torment. The child appeared, once more in its haunting alabaster skin, but now it danced gracefully through the air, trailing shadows like a shroud. Its laugh had transformed into a chilling melody, ethereal notes that reached into my core, echoing the macabre chaos swirling within. "You cannot leave. You are bound by the ties of fear." I pushed myself to my feet, each step a testament to my determination. Though through sensation, I knew I was surrounded by a growing mass of dark energy. I backed against the wall, my pulse racing, mind unspooling. Everything and everyone I had attempted to escape echoed relentlessly within a fervent gesture. I yanked open a door I hadn't initially noticed, flinging myself into the pitch-black hallway beyond. I stumbled through, the darkness pressing against my skin like icy hands pulling me back. But I wouldn't succumb. I couldn't. The air became colder, each breath fogging before me like the breath of the damned. A flickering light appeared in the distance, dim and wavering, like a solitary candle in an abyss. I pressed on, hoping it would lead me to a sanctuary away from the distorted phantoms pursuing me. As I approached, the light materialized into a room barren save for a lone mirror standing against the far wall, its surface shimmering unsettlingly. "Look." The child's voice chimed unsettlingly from behind, softer yet saturated with malice. I felt its presence seep into my very soul, coiling around me like a serpent. My heart thumped wildly as I turned toward the mirror, the reflective surface rippling like disturbed water. I stepped closer, the world around me anthracite and inert, and that's when I saw them repeating faces. Their mouths stretched into silent screams as they pressed against the glass, twisted in pain and sorrow. Trembling, I focused on my reflection. Yet I didn't see myself. I saw the faces of those I had long lost, their indelible torment now laid bare, reaching out toward me as if seeking release. Each one bore the weight of my abandonment, eyes flickering with memories culled from the depths of my despair. "What do you want?" I begged, overwhelmed by the sorrowful chorus that surrounded my very essence, voices rising to a crescendo. "Join us," they wailed, the sound merging with the child's laughter until they became one. We were never truly apart. Fighting against the surge of horror, I turned to flee, but the room twisted violently, and the mirror's surface melted. It drew them closer, sucked in their twisted forms until I stood trembling, besieged by ethereal fingers dragging at my mind. With a final plunge, the mirror shattered, glass exploding outward, a chaotic rain that swallowed me in layers of sharp specters. As the shards pierced my skin, their icy presence jolted through me, awakening something horrifyingly familiar. In that instant, I caught a glimpse of what awaited me, waiting just beyond the reflective shards, an interim between worlds. I screamed as 1,000 whispers surged within, a terrifying amalgamation of memories and feelings surging to drown me. Through the shattered fragments, the child watched, now grinning impossibly wide, as shadows began to swarm. I felt myself slipping into darkness once again, the boundaries of reality stretching taut, and just before everything fell apart around me, I heard the child's voice slicing through the chaos. "You thought you could escape? Welcome home." And then, with a shudder that rattled my bones, I was consumed, the shadows exploding in frenzied dance as the world pitched into a void, leaving only a suffocating silence. In that last fleeting moment, I realized the mirror hadn't shown me an exit. It had become the final prison. The horror of my fate echoed bitterly within the laughter as my surroundings collapsed, leaving me suspended in twilight forever. As darkness enveloped my mind, a chilling breath whispered directly into my ear, "Now you belong to us." The pressure of the silence was unbearable, wrapping around my throat like a noose. I could feel remnants of what had once been me dissolve into the ether, lost to the despair-laden blackness that enveloped me. Yet, in that suffocating absence, a new sound emerged, a low, rhythmic pulsing that resonated like a heartbeat, steady and relentless. That I strained against the nothingness, fighting to hold onto the fragments of my soul that felt so perilously close to being snuffed out. The heartbeat matched the thrum in my own chest, a sinister echo rippling through the void. Tentatively, I reached outward into the darkness, unsure of what lay ahead. The shadows flickered with the promise of another presence. Gradually, like a dawn after a long, oppressive night, the void gave way to dim shapes coalescing around me. An eerie luminescence enveloped the scenes that began to unveil themselves, a tableau of macabre elegance that sent tremors through my core. Broken walls loomed like shattered teeth in the haunting light, and the air thickened with the smell of mildew and rot. I was in a corridor, lined with doors, each one etched with the names of the lost. Names I recognized. Names that once brought solace now pierced me with guilt. My mother, my father, friends whose faces came back only to be marred by sorrow. Each door seemed to vibrate against the fabric of my reality, begging for release, begging for someone to listen. Before I could fully comprehend what I was seeing, a chilling shriek ripped through the corridor, a soul-crushing wail that thudded in my chest. It came from behind one of the closest doors, and instinctively, I took a step back. I knew I should run, yet I felt an insidious pull, curiosity mingled with dread. But as the cries faded into a suffocating silence, another door creaked open to my right, revealing an expanse of shadows shifting like smoke. Tentatively, I approached, heart pounding loudly within my ribcage. The space beyond seemed to stretch endlessly, darkness pooling into the corners like ink. "Help me," a soft voice emanated from the shadows, a woman's voice thick with despair. "You must save us." The chilling familiarity of the voice gripped me, igniting long-buried fears. Was it one of them? "Who are you?" I called back, my voice a mere whisper against the growing distance between us. "I am lost," she murmured, the sound laced with agony. "You must choose, or we will forever remain trapped." A door behind me slammed shut, reverberating through the corridor like a death knell. My heart leapt, and I spun around to see each door rattling violently as if something unseen was trying to break free. Shadows writhed, sinister forms echoing the agony of the cries that filled the air, a haunting melody of suffering that resonated deep within my bones. Panicked, I looked back at the woman's doorway, but she was fading now, shadows consuming her cry. I felt an overwhelming wave of urgency and horror at the idea of her being lost. Yet an insistent force kept my feet rooted to the ground. What must I choose? I shouted, desperation spilling over through my words. But she was gone, swallowed by the dark, leaving only an echo of her sorrow. The cries grew louder, wailing from the doors now rattling against their frames, beckoning me toward them as if they held the answers I desperately sought. I hesitated, torn between the inexplicable need to respond to their anguish and the paralyzing fear of what I might unleash. A sense of dread curled within me, taking shape into a visceral certainty of something lurking beyond the threshold. Shadows twisted and darkened around each door, warping the light until the corridor became a prison of despair itself. The heartbeat throbbed louder, an oppressive percussion that grew unbearably, warning echoes that reverberated off every wall, pushing me toward madness. Suddenly, a door to my left slammed open, revealing a swirling vortex of darkness, broken whispers and chilling laughter entwined within, pulling me toward a nightmarish abyss. I fought the pull, but the shadows surged, clutching at my limbs with icy fingers, drawing me closer and closer. In a burst of desperation, I broke free, sprinting down the corridor toward the farthest door, trusting my gut that it held a semblance of escape. I reached out, my fingers brushing against the cold metal knob, but the shadows surged around me, a shrieking mass of anguish swelling behind. Without thinking, I threw the door wide open only to find it led to an open forest, under a starless sky, the air thick with mists that crawled along the ground. I stepped through in disbelief, heart racing, when a chilling realization struck me. The rhythm of the heartbeat followed me, pounding in my ears, ominously proclaiming that I had merely traded one prison for another. The forest stretched endlessly, and with every step, I felt the laughing shadows behind me gathering, tightening their hold, their laughter rising in a dissonant chorus. "You think you can escape?" they sang, and then, from the depths of the trees, emerged the child, its alabaster skin glowing with malicious intent. "You can't run away," it taunted, eyes flashing, hunger evident in its gaze. You are never truly free. As I stumbled deeper into the suffocating darkness of the woods, an unbearable thought gripped me. The forest was alive, entwined with sorrow and memories, a labyrinth designed to ensnare those who dared enter. With a deafening roar, the spirits erupted all around me, their anguished faces forming a tempest of grief, and amid their cacophony, I heard the whispers of my name pulling me into a ghastly embrace. I found myself caught between light and dark, reality unraveling dangerously until I could no longer discern the two. Your choice has been made, the child announced, a cruel glee in its voice, and amid the chaos, darkness surged forward, its numbing tendrils ensnaring my thoughts. The last thing I saw was the moonrise, a pale figure drifting into the night, dark laughter ringing as I was consumed, and just then, through the tumultuous clouds, came a flicker of light, a pale shadow of hope. The light danced just beyond my reach, elusive and filled with promise. Yet it felt like a mirage amid a storm, beckoning me with a siren's call. As the darkness closed in, its icy tendrils pulsing with malevolence, I grasped for that flicker, desperate to escape the impending despair that threatened to swallow me whole. But the shadows were relentless. They surged forward, wrapping around me like a cloak of sorrow, their whispers echoing with taunts of futility. You will never escape, they hissed in unison, a chorus of tormented souls reminding me of the truth I sought to deny. No matter how far I ran, I was eternally bound to them, tied together by threads of loss and grief that wove through the very fabric of my being. Suddenly, the child, the effigy of pale skin and wild eyes, darted ahead, its laughter sickeningly sweet as it disappeared into the thick veil of trees. Come find me if you dare. It danced further into the depths, its voice weaving through the air like a poisoned vine, intoxicating yet terrifying with the spirits crowding around me. Their faces a grotesque blend of sorrow, anguish, and anger, I moved forward, compelled by an inexplicable urge. The trees seemed to shift and stretch, creating pathways that twisted into impossible directions, each step sending ripples through the layers of darkness that clung to the ground. My heart thundered, beating in sync with the ominous cadence of dread that threatened to overwhelm me as I pushed deeper into the woods. I could hear it again, the low, rhythmic pulsing, yet now it thrummed through the very ground beneath my feet, overwhelming my senses with its ghostly resonance. It felt as if the forest itself had a heartbeat, a dark, twisted life force that was watching, waiting. Then came the screamsa cacophony of anguished cries that pierced through the twilight mist in every direction, echoing the very essence of despair. I stumbled, instinctively raising my hands to my ears, futilely trying to block out the haunting sounds that pulled me under waves of nausea and fear. It felt like each scream was a memory, a glimpse into the tormented souls trapped within this cursed forest, and I was slipping dangerously into its depths. Join us, the whispering voices called, their words thick with dark allure, wrapping around my mind like barbed wire. Stay with us, forever. My resolve began to falter. The pulsing heartbeat pressed against my chest, synchronizing with my fears. What was my choice? Surrender to the darkness that promised relief from agony, or fight against an eternity of sorrow? The lines blurred, and the weight of my indecision settled heavily upon my shoulders. Yet through the din of despair, a glimpse caught my eye, a flash of white flitting between the trees, followed by the child's laughter, calling me deeper into the heart of the unknown. You must choose, it echoed, voice teasing me with its eerie chime. There was something captivating about it, something I couldn't turn away from. Perhaps it held the key to absolution. With a single breath, I pushed forward, running toward the flickering hope, the narrow beam of light shimmering as if it were a sacred gateway. The darkness recoiled slightly, creating a path that opened before me, feeling almost intoxicatingly real. But with each step, I could feel the weight of countless souls trailing behind me, their whispers growing desperate, urging me to turn back. Suddenly, the light flared, illuminating a grotesque figure, a woman, twisted and carried by shadows, her face pale and sunken, eyes filled with unspeakable pain. No, don't go to it, she shrieked, terror lacing her voice, but my feet wouldn't stop. The pulsing beats surged around me, guiding me with insistence. No, I screamed, panic rising as I approached the light. In an instant, a cold hand seized my wrist, wrenching me back. I stared into the face of the woman, her mouth opening in a silent scream, eyes wide with terror as if she was witnessing something truly horrifying. Suddenly, the world shifted again, the shadows growing ravenous, consuming her in an otherworldly feast. The child's laughter rang out once more, dark and gleeful, proclaiming my impending doom. "You're too late," it cackled, the forest around me trembling with an exhilarating menace. "You've chosen your end," with a final deafening pulse. The ground beneath me erupted, splitting wide open under the weight of the shadows, the abyss yawning like a mouth eager to devour me whole. I fought against the pull, panic rising as I felt myself falling, screaming into the void. And just then, a clarion bell echoed through the forest, shattering the silence and cutting through the dark. The laughter stilled, and a hush fell as I found myself suspended in the air, weightless, staring into the encroaching void, where something monstrous began to emerge. "Welcome back," it whispered in a voice that felt both familiar and far too old, a harbinger of terror that twisted around my heart, leaving me gasping for breath as I waited for the horrifying truth to reveal itself. I hung there, suspended in the void, as the chilling whispers transformed into a symphony of despair, rising and falling like waves crashing against jagged rocks. The familiar voice grew louder, reverberating through my bones and twisting my memories. It was the voice of someone I had lost, someone whose mere presence had once filled me with warmth. Now, it wrapped around my heart like a vice, squeezing the light from my soul. "Yo, you remember me? Cood. Oh, how I missed you all this time." Each word dripped with an enticing sorrow, a melody of sorrowful remembrance that tugged at the fragile seams of my sanity. The memories rushed at me, vivid and raw fragments of laughter and love, intermingled with the anguish of loss. I recoiled, fighting against the emotions that surged and enveloped me like a storm. "Let go," the voice continued, softening as if weaving a tender spell over my fractured being. "Embrace the truth. Join us at last." As its grip urged me downward, I felt the shadows clawing at me, hungry tendrils searching for purchase, probing deep into my psyche, feeding on my fear. I fought against the onslaught, the haunting lullaby of acceptance. I couldn't let them pull me under, couldn't succumb. I had battled too long against this darkness. Focusing on the flickering of that ephemeral light, I steeled my resolve and pushed back against the clutches of the void. With a desperate gasp, I tumbled downward, falling through wisps of smoke that folded and twisted as if alive. The darkness snarled, and above the gust of whispers, I could hear the screams of those who had fallen before me, tortured souls lost in the eternal gray. But still, even as terror raged inside me, the light pulsed brightly, growing stronger with each desperate heartbeat. The ground rushed to meet me, harder than expected, and I landed with a sickening thud, the impact knocking the breath from my lungs. I gasped, blinking through the fog of darkness spinning around me, noting the sickly sweet fragrance of decay that filled the air. Struggling to my feet, I found myself back in the heart of the forest, where the trees loomed taller and darker than before, their gnarled branches clawing at the night sky like skeletal fingers. The child was gone, but I could still hear the echoes of its laughter fading into the night, like a haunting tune luring me deeper into madness. I looked around, the shadows seeming to close in once more, and it felt like a suffocating embrace, wretched and inviting. In that moment, I spotted something caught between the roots of the gnarled trees. A scrap of cloth, faded and dirt-stained. My heart dropped. The fabric was familiar. It was part of an old quilt, a keepsake from my childhood, lovingly made by my grandmother, long gone. I stepped closer, instinctively reaching out, drawn by the pull of nostalgia and anguish intertwining like a finely woven tapestry of memories. As I knelt, the earth beneath me shifted, the very roots writhing like serpents eager to strike. Before I could react, cruel hands emerged from the depths, clawing toward me, pulling me down as I struggled against their grip. My heart raced in terror. The shadows had awakened, hungry and relentless, and I was once again ensnared. I cried out, a raw sound ripping from my throat. "Let me go!" The cries of countless souls filled the air, their anguish crashing over me like a wave, drowning any flicker of hope I clung to. I felt my strength waning, the grip of despair closing around me with horrific certainty. But in the cacophony of wails and whispers, one voice rose above the rest, piercing through my fear. "Find me," it begged, filled with anguish and urgency. The tone was different, resonating with a warmth that felt just out of reach. I realized it was not the child, nor was it the voice from the void. It was someone else. "Help me." A flicker of determination ignited within me, igniting the embers of defiance that refused to be quenched. I would not let the darkness claim me. Grabbing the roots with both hands, I forced myself up, climbing against the insatiable pull of the shadows that sought to drag me back into their depths. Suddenly, I broke free, tumbling into a clearing drenched in moonlight. But the light held no promise of safety as the figure arose before me, draped in shadows that pulsated with an energy heavy with foreboding. My breath caught in my throat as I recognized the outlineian all too familiar silhouette, marked by a chilling absence of warmth. "Why did you abandon me?" the figure rasped, voice hollow yet strangely familiar, laced with pain. We could have been free together, that I couldn't comprehend what I was witnessing as the shadows encircled the figure, twisting and writhing in a grotesque display of sorrow and rage. I opened my mouth to scream, but the air was stolen from my lungs when I locked eyes with the apparition. Such pain mirrored my own, a reflection of the fractured pieces I had buried deep within. Suddenly, the shadows lunged, striking from all around, drawing closer as the chilling whispers swelled to a deafening roar. In that moment of chaos, I had an epiphany. This entity was not an enemy. It was a specter of my own grief, a manifestation of everything I had feared to confront. And before I could gather my thoughts to fight back, it lunged towards me, a flurry of darkness, and I caught a glimpse of familiar eyes, anguished yet pleading. "Help me," it screamed, echoing the last breath of someone I had lost long ago, just as the shadows enveloped us both, pulling us into the inky blackness. The last sound I heard was my own scream mingling with the tortured howl of the wind, as the forest itself shuddered, alive with hunger and darkness, leaving nothing but silence in its wake. I lay in the suffocating darkness, and as quiet as the void was, it suffused with a tangible tension that felt alive, whispering secrets too horrid to hear. My heart thundered against my ribs, echoing the tremors that rippled through the ground beneath me. The darkness pressed in like a weight, and when I finally found the strength to move, I discovered my hands were stained with something slick, deep, dark, and thick, reminiscent of the earth from which I had emerged. Panic surged through me as the familiar laughter returned suddenly, a ghostly echo of a bygone time twisted into something malevolent. It resonated through the trees, pressing against my sanity like sharp tendrils trying to weave their way inside my mind. "Find me." The voices chimed in unison, a discordant chorus luring me into their dreadful embrace. Compelled by dread and instinct, I stumbled forward, desperate to escape the weight of those memories. The forest was now unfamiliar, its once benign shapes morphed into grotesque parodies of life. Trees twisted in agonizing postures, their gnarled branches resembling tortured limbs. I sensed eyes watching me from the shadows, unseen creatures that reveled in my fear, but I pressed on. Ahead, a light flickered in the abyss, a dim, quivering glow that beckoned me, teasing my longing for safety. I approached it cautiously, each step sending ripples through the air like whispers caught on the wind. As I neared, I discovered it wasn't a fire, but an ancient lantern swaying gently, and rooted around it were shriveled forms, twisted and curled in a sleep deep as death. They stirred as I drew closer, their hollow eyes snapping open. A symphony of rasping breaths echoed through the clearing as their skeletal forms shifted, reveling in the warmth of the light, their longing for it palpable, almost smothering. I shuddered, backing away, but not before one of the figures caught my gaze, sunken cheeks contoured in horror but eyes that glimmered with a reluctant familiarity. "Please," it croaked, voice trembling like a leaf caught in a storm. "Don't leave us here, find the truth." The words hung thick in the air, suffused with pain as if it were carved from the shadows themselves. As I blinked in stupor, more figures began to crawl from the darkness, their movements grotesque, as if they had been hastily reassembled from shards of broken dreams. Their essence dissolved, mixing into the darkness like smoke, and the glimmer from the lantern flickered in response, waning, threatening to plunge us all into inky despair. But I knew I needed to learn whatever they were safeguarding, clutching desperately to the belief that knowledge could free me. I had seen enough of the madness to realize it was rooted here, among these forsaken spirits, and I could almost feel the truth coiling like a serpent in the pit of my stomach, a dizzying revelation at the very edge of awareness. "Who are you?" I croaked, struggling to remain coherent as the air grew thick with dread, shadows swirling like hungry beasts. "What happened?" With frustrated urgency, the figures shifted, mirroring my fear as their countenances twisted through the veil of memory. "She took them. She took us all." The chorus rose, a cacophony of terror and betrayal that washed over me, drowning in the sentiment. "You must remember, you must stop her." Images invaded my thoughts, flickering like an old film, one I had long since buried. A woman with an unsettling smile, her laughter echoing into forgotten dreams, guiding us through a forest drenched in mist and sorrow. The memories twisted, reforming like a toxic bloom, and all at once, panic gripped May was her prey, no different than those who now clawed for the light. Fueled by that realization, I turned to flee, but the ground trembled violently beneath me, and an unbearable ghastly wail erupted from behind. The lantern flickered violently, splattering droplets of light against the trees, revealing shadowed figures lunging toward met-twisted faces contorted in anguish, mouths stretched open in silent screams, the very essence of despair. That I bolted, thrusting myself into the maze of dark trees, adrenaline surging as their desperate cries surged behind me. The air pulsed with malevolent energy, urging me to turn back, to surrender. Yet I pressed forward, each step fraught with the weight of my past, traversing the precipice of darkness that threatened to swallow me whole. As I stumbled through the underbrush, I stumbled upon a clearing once more, the night shimmering with an eerie light. In the center lay an altar, adorned with items that looked painfully familiar. Photographs, trinkets, and drawings, the cherished remnants of lives long extinguished piled high in disarray. Fate's cruel trophies. My breath hitched. Above it, the silhouette of the woman loomed, her form cloaked in shadow, eyes brimming with the hollow chasms of hunger. "You've come so far," she whispered, voice enticing yet chilling, luring me closer. "All you need to do is give in. Join me and we shall be freed." At I end that moment, the figures of the Forsaken swarmed at my feet, clawing desperately at my ankles, their whispers melding into an agonized cry. I felt the darkness close around me, and the woman smiled, the familiar grin twisted into something unrecognizable, something inhuman. "Do you want to know the truth?" she purred, as the ground trembled once again, whispering promises of despair. Before I could respond, the earth beneath me shattered, plunging into a yawning abyss that opened wide, like a wound, and just as I felt myself slipping into the void, the woman's laughter, a hollow, perilous serenade echoed through my mind, consuming me in its terrifying embrace. A single scream rose against the night, suspended as the darkness shifted, and my consciousness shattered, leaving only a chilling silence in its wake. The void swallowed me whole, and for a breathless heartbeat, I floated in an unsettling tranquility. Darkness enveloped me, holding me in a suspended state between past and future. Reality and the nightmarish visions that coiled around my mind felt like a curse. No longer tethered to time, I surrendered to the whispers of the abyss, where hidden truths begged to be unearthed. Then, a powerful jolt yanked me back into the cruel clutch of existence. I slammed onto the cold, hard ground, gasping as the world rushed back, violently illuminated by a flash of moonlight that cut the darkness in half. The clearing where I had fallen was now marred with bizarre symbols etched into the earth, pulsating with a sullen light, a warning shimmering through the air, teasing the edges of my vision before fading into obscurity. Staggering to my feet, panic coursed through my veins. The figures I'd fled earlier had transformed, their anguished faces now morphed into grotesque masks of terror that contorted in a twisted dance around the periphery of my sanity. They circled wider, edging away from the altar, a simmering dread in their haunted eyes, but I felt the dark tendrils of memory wrapping tighter around me, urging me toward the altar's grotesque offerings. With trembling steps, I approached the scattered remnants, my fingers brushing against the photographs laid carelessly in the dirt. Faces stared back at Maya family once whole. Their eyes glazed with a joy devoid of understanding. The chilling spirit of innocence forever trapped in the laughter of a sun-drenched afternoon. And then their faces twisted, eyes darkening, morphing into the same wretched visages that now encircled me. "Mother," I gasped, recognizing the figure in one photograph, standing serene amidst the shadows, the edges of the image stained by a dark, creeping ooze. Her eyes betrayed a knowing, an awareness that chilled my bones. She had been my protector, my guiding light, but what if all along, she had been the one pulling the strings of this nightmare? The air thickened, acrid with despair, daring me to confront the truth. "Stop her." The chorus of the Forsaken careened through my thoughts, their torment a rolling tide of despair longing for release. "You must awaken the truth." A howl pierced the air, penetrating the fragile veil of my thoughts. The warmth of flesh grazed my arm, a sudden touch, cold and damp. Instinctively, I spun around, heart racing as another shadow loomed. The woman's ominous figure pulsed right at the edge of my vision. She seemed to dissolve and reform, her presence shifting like smoke caught in a tempest. And now I could see tears streaming down her face, which shimmered as if carved from the depths of twilight. "Everything you see is my design," she whispered, voice low and rich with a brooding melancholy. "These are the stories they left behind, each one a fragment of my truth, stolen to fuel my existence." Flashes of memories surged through me, plunging deeper, revealing fragments of a shared life I thought had been extinguished. A memory of laughter, of light, but always tainted with shadows lurking at the periphery. "No, you twisted them, they needed to remember," she hissed, and in the depths of her wrath, I glimpsed the depths of her sorrow. "You play your part still, little puppet. Do you truly think you can awaken their stories without paying the price?" But realization sent shockwaves through my mind. What was her price? Was I merely a thread in her tapestry of horror, merely an echo of her madness? I struggled against the weight of my own fear, urging memories to surface, grasping at the glimmer of truth as if it were a lifeline. "Find them," the Forsaken bellowed, desperation raw and palpable. As they surged closer, desperate to be heard. "Before she turns you to ash." And with that, they lunged. The shadows cascaded toward me, limbs reaching with hungry fingers that clawed through the air, begging for recognition, for release. I stumbled backward, heart racing in time with the terror that encompassed me. With each desperate step, their voices crescendoed into a horrifying symphony. "You must confront her. She holds them bound by your fear, by your unwillingness to remember." It was suffocating, their plea, a requiem woven from sorrow, mingling with the woman's haunting, alluring darkness. I had felt the pull before, had known the bitter sweetness of temptation, but this time it was different. There were whispers of power, of control hidden among the dreadful emotions swirling in the air around me. With a quickness born from sheer desperation, I turned to face the woman fully. Her laughter echoed around us, a tempest of madness crashing against the inner walls of my psyche. "You wish to struggle?" she crooned. "You cannot understand." But I would refuse the pull even if it cost me everything. I steeled myself, tapping into the remnants of the memories that could set them free, me loved ones entombed within the dark cracks of this accursed wood. Clenching my fists, I declared, "Tell me, what price?" My voice rising over the din, "Do I pay to set them free?" Her smile stretched unnaturally, revealing teeth too sharp, too pointy, glistening dangerously in the dim light of the moon. "Everything comes at a cost, darling," she taunted, "but we can barter your truth for their freedom." And suddenly, beneath the weight of her gaze, the forest shifted, rending itself from reality as shadows coalesced into a nightmarish swirl. Searing light took the place of darkness, and I felt reality fracturing into fractals of torment and euphoria. Each moment pulled tighter until something snapped. With a jolting surge, the earth beneath me erupted, opening up once more, but this time revealing not an abyss of dark, but a blinding white light. A doorway swirled into existence, a chance of escape, a chance to confront everything buried within. And as I teetered at the precipice, the chorus of the Forsaken spiraled up, their voices tilting my resolve. Choose wisely, they cried, desperation coating each syllable with dread as the radiance drew closer. I was torn, heart racing against the thundering drums of madness that replaced the silence. I chose, but just then, a pair of icy hands clutched my shoulders from behind, pulling me back into the embrace of shadows. Stay. A voice hissed, laden with anguish that laced the very air with dread. The woman's laughter rang out like a siren's call, and suddenly I was confronted not only by her twisted form but the dark, unrelenting truth of my own choices, a truth I was not ready to face. And in that confounding moment of light and dark, I felt the ground beneath me rumble and split, engulfing me in a torrent of shadow and light as I screamed, suspended in that last echoing cry, every horror I had faced erupting alongside the impossible choice I had to make. As the darkness closed around me, I realized the shock of revelation could break me, and only the whispers of the past held the promise of salvation if I could discover who I was before the light engulfed me completely. And before I could think, the echoes of laughter twisted into a cacophony of truth and deception, drawing me in one last time, into the unknown. The air was thick, stagnant with an unsettling anticipation, as I struggled to regain my sense of reality. The heavy darkness closed in, isolating me within a shifting void where time lost meaning. Somewhere deep within me, a lantern flickered, illuminating the shards of memories I had woven throughout the fabric of my existence. As the cacophony of despair faded away, what felt like an eternity collapsed into one singular moment of clarity. The laughter of the child, innocent yet malevolent, echoed faintly, growing more distant as my surroundings shifted once more, pulling me back toward the altar of tangled memories. But this time, I moved with purpose, driven by a singular desire to confront the truth that had twisted my life into this living nightmare. The figures of the forsaken still lingered as shadows, their haunting eyes filled with desperate hope. Find her story, they urged in unison, the urgency of their words cutting through the fog that clouded my mind. Every fiber of my being coaxed me to remember beyond the shadows, beyond the darkness, into the crystalline light that dwelled just beyond grasp. I felt a tether of connection I had neglected, pulling me back home. That I faced the altar, the grotesque remnants swirling beneath its gruesome halo. With trembling hands, I sifted through the scattered photographs and trinkets, each an echo of laughter, love, and loss intertwined. They held the key, fragments of my past pleading to be acknowledged, woven together with threads of sorrow and hope. It was not merely a matter of confronting the woman, it was about acknowledging both her and my own story. Oh, grandmother, I murmured as I gripped a fabric square, the birthmark of my lineage entwined with those lost. As the memories surged within me, I could feel their weight lift, the echoes of betrayal, joy, heartache, and warmth cascading through my mind, building into a crescendo that beat like a war drum. Suddenly, the shadows began to writhe and twist, coalescing into a single formidable shape. The woman emerged, her figure shifting between ethereal beauty and grotesque malice, heart-shaped eyes glinting with indignation. You dare claim their stories? She hissed, a mocking fury evident in her tone. You would trade their truth for yours? Yes, I shouted, my heart hammering as I stepped forward, tethered to the memories of all the lives I had left behind. But I've learned they are intertwined. You've fed on our pain, but in return, I will set them free from your grasp. The woman roared, her form expanding, the shadows raging around her as she lashed out. But now, illuminated by the truths I had reclaimed, I stood grounded, arms wide open. I embrace all of it, love, the loss, the fear. Let their stories flow through me. A burst of radiant light erupted from within, clashing against the woman's dark essence, illuminating the entire forest in a blinding glow. Power surged through me, a powerful surge that unbound the memories buried deep within the altar of despair. Faces reached out across the dimensions of time, eyes shimmering with realization as their collective stories ignited the gravity of liberation. Release them, I screamed, and as I did, the shadows howled, clawing at their hold on reality, writhing within the grasp of the unveiled truth. Their twisted forms began to dissolve like mist under the morning sun, fading with each heartbeat, every gasp of liberation that echoed through the forest. Yet just as victory surged through my veins, a mind-numbing dissonance split the air. From the depths of the fading darkness came a horrific revelation. I hadn't merely freed the lost souls within the shadows. I had damnably cemented my connection to them. The laughter morphed into a primal Carusa cacophony, tearing through the remnants of my will, a flurry of voices vying for recognition, all clamoring to inhabit my core. You thought you could free us? The woman's voice twisted from the shadows, a mirthless sneer palpable in her tone. You're bound now, my dear. Forever. I felt their despair coiling tightly around me, binding me deeper to the very essence of all the lives I had sought to liberate. My memories scrambled, forced to amalgamate into the tapestry of the forsaken. It was not just their anguish I had won, my soul was now entwined with each and every one of them, an ambassador forever cursed to bear witness to their anguished cries. Panic turned to realization, all that agony, all those stories, surging within me like an unstoppable tide. No, you cannot do this, I gasped, confusion swirling as the shadows encroached, feasting on the space left behind. But as the darkness closed in, I knew this was the true price I'd paid. The echoes of those I had lost, forever intertwined with my fate, would haunt my every moment, whispering their tales in the stillness of my mind. The hushed secrets of 1,000 souls flickered behind my eyes, threatening to consume me. A collage of grief that was now mine to carry. Then, in one haunting breath, I glimpsed the truth. You cannot silence me, I whispered, heart pounding with the weight of the realization. You think you own me? This is not merely suffering, I am a vessel of their stories. And just then, as the darkness loomed, a flicker of recognition twinkled in the abyss. A child's laughter warbled once more, brighter than before, reminiscent of untainted innocence and laughter that came from somewhere deep within. As I opened my mouth to scream, it was no longer fear that escaped my lips, but the songs of the lost, a symphony of truth proclaiming, both resilient and terrifying, we are never alone. We will always remember. With that final breath, the darkness erupted into a torrent of light, blinding and consuming. The last thing I saw was the frolicking shadows, swirling joyfully around me. Then came the ceaseless laughter, entwined with relentless wailing, laying bare the realization that this was my life now, not a prison but a testament. Wherever I wandered, whatever new horrors awaited, their voices, haunting but steady, would be my guiding light. Just as the echoes filled the void, a final whisper curled around me, a chilling reminder that I could never escape. You thought you would be free? Welcome to forever. And as the darkness closed in, I knew with dreadful clarity that I had just become the newest tale for the lost, their story preserved in my heart, echoing through the shadows, forever alive.